If you want to use webinars for the marketing in your business, what is the best tool to use? That's a question I've been trying to answer. Personally, I've used GoToWebinar for basically ever, and I'm looking for a solution that provides a better experience for me as a webinar host, as well as for my webinar attendees. I want better marketing features, better engagement features, and hopefully, not pay an insane amount of money for it either. This video is a review of Demio, and Demio is an alternative webinar platform that looks really simple and clean and boasts some interesting features. So in this video, let's have a look at what Demio is actually like, what the features look like, and what it's like to use it as a host of a webinar, and what it's like as an experience for your attendees. So let's head over and take a look at what Demio looks like when you sign up for it. This is the dashboard that you're greeted with. As you can see, it is very simple, and we simply have a way to add a new event. So let's take a look at what we can do. So right away, we can choose between live events or automated events. And for an automated event, you have to either upload a video or you can choose a previous event. So if I click here, you can see that it suggests my previous events to use those for my automated events. For this demo, I'm going to show you the setup of a live event. So we'll go back and we'll call this demo event and then continue to the next step. Then we have schedules. So we can either have recurring schedule if you have something like a weekly webinar, or just a single date and time. You can set that. And then we can customize and share this webinar. So in customization here, some important steps are going to take place. We have the option to use registration pages or landing pages that are built into Demio, or we can embed these form fields. So if we customize this, then you can see this is what it looks like. It's a very simple page. You can change the logo here, but only on the mid pricing tier, and I'll get back to that later. And you can change some of the details. So they have a couple of different templates, although not many, that you can choose from. You can set your branding colors and change the logo, and you can turn parts of the page on and off. So you can edit text such as the subheading, and you can either have that text or not have it, but beyond that, there's very, very little customization on this page. The landing pages are very minimal. They're functional, but I wouldn't say that they're conversion optimized. They're really just about serviceable. But luckily, this is not the only option we have. So if you want to do more and you want to have a more conversion optimized page to get people to sign up, you can do that. So instead of using the built-in registration page, we can go here and you'll find embed options. So you can either embed the form itself as an HTML form on any landing page, or you can have a pop-over embed, so you'll just have a button, and when someone clicks on that button, then the form opens up like this. So I think that's a fairly good and straightforward way to be able to insert this on your own landing pages and really use your own funnels for your Demio webinar events. And that also kind of bypasses the problem with not being able to change the logo unless you pay a higher price. Back to the customizations, we've got some kind of default options. We have a lot of reminder emails by default. You can edit them, you can also turn them off, and you can basically decide how people are notified as your event comes up. And some of the most important pieces are in the room settings, because right here you can add resources and you can add polls, you can add handouts, which would be files that people can download, or you can add what are called featured actions, which is basically a call to action. So if you have a sales pitch in your webinar and you want to present that sales pitch at a certain point, this is what you would use. In the room settings, you can also upload your slides if you want, and you can add videos. So you can upload presentation slides and you can add videos which are just YouTube URLs. So you can add a link to a YouTube video that will be played at a specific time during your webinar. Then we have in settings, you can make the chat private. So you can decide whether people will see each other's chat messages or whether only admins or only hosts will see those messages. And that can be an important decision to make, because if you have chat, you'll generally have more engagement, but people will be engaging with each other more than with you and more than with your material that you present. So it's good that we have this option. You can also redirect people to a page you want after the webinar ends. Then you can add other presenters and moderators, which is good. And you can also have integrations. They integrate with several email marketing tools, and there's also a Zapier integration, so you can make this work with whatever else you use in your marketing stack. So with the basic settings done, we are ready to look at the webinar room and webinar experience itself. So over here, you get a share link. This would be the link that you send to your audience. And what I'm going to do is, in my other browser here, I'm going to pretend to be an attendee. So let's enter this URL right here. And here you can see I can go ahead and sign up. This is what the sign up flow looks like on the default landing page. So after registering, it shows me this here with the join link and with an option to add this to my calendar. I'm going to go ahead right away and join the room. And before the event starts, you can see we just see a countdown, which I think makes sense. This is also the link that people will get in the email that gets sent once they register. So let's go back to the admin view here. In the summary, here is where I can join the room as an admin. Let's log in. And then there's our test interface. It gives me a connection speed test, which I think is good. I can choose my camera right here, and I can choose my microphone and make sure everything works, and then get started. Now we can test everything we need to test here, and the webinar will only start and people will only start seeing anything once we choose to start the webinar. So right here, let's get started. We can do screen sharing. I will do that here, and I will choose. So I'm just sharing a browser tab here as an example. And what's a bit strange in Demio is that it will show me kind of a preview of the screen I'm sharing with this overlay the whole time. This can be a bit strange to see, but you know, the actual attendees will see the screen normally. I guess the good thing is that I can very easily, stop sharing and change the window without having to fiddle with a lot of settings. But I did find that a little irritating, that I'm not really seeing the screen I'm sharing here in the admin view. All right, next up here, I can share my microphone and my webcam. I'm going to go ahead and share the webcam. And then I'm going to start the webinar, because right now what you can see here, we have the admin view. Because I haven't started the webinar yet, the visitor, the attendee, doesn't see anything yet. So now I'm going to start the webinar. And it gives me a countdown, which is a bit strange because it doesn't actually immediately start when the countdown goes to 0. And then also a bit strange on the attendee side, I'm basically asked to log in again, or just to click to log in. So I kind of have to confirm that I want to join. But this is what happens. And it's important to be aware of this because the countdown goes to 0, but at that point, probably no one's seeing you yet because they all have to first click on the other link. So it's important to know of. The recording will start at this point though. So as you can see, we have the admin view here, we have the attendee view here. They're very, very similar. And there are a couple of things that are good to know about. For example, in the admin view, I have this stacked view with the little live video on top and the screen at the bottom. I can choose, there's like this plus minus function, and I can also manually resize here. But it's important to know that this doesn't affect the attendee view. So the attendee as well has control over that. They can choose to minimize or maximize this. But that's it, like the two are not synchronized. So if I want to emphasize my live video, I basically have to do that by stopping the screen sharing. Right? Once I do that, then the live video goes full screen for everyone. Next, let's look at some of the engagement features here. So we've got a chat, so we can have a chat message here. And as an admin, you will see these. You can reply to them. And you can also mark a chat message as a favorite and then filter the messages to only show favorites. This is, it seems, the only way to kind of sort or filter your chat messages. There's no questions and answer functionality here. So what you'll likely have, especially in a busy room, is you'll have just a ton of chat messages, and it'll be quite difficult to figure out like which ones are important, which ones should you pay attention to, and which ones should you answer. Then let's look at the marketing features. So on the admin side right here, I can click on this plus to show the things I've prepared, or even during the webinar, I can create another poll. I can create other things during the webinar. So here's what happens if I share my polls. I have this poll here. I just click on it and I get a prompt. When I click on yes, then both the admin and the attendees will see a poll. And as an attendee, I will just see the question with the possible choices. I will click on one and then it will show me the results. This is something you can choose. You can also choose not to share the poll. Here's another kind of quirk. As an admin, I can choose to hide this poll, and one would think that that hides the poll for everyone, but it actually doesn't. Your attendees can also choose to hide or show the poll. The control is on the attendee side. So there's just kind of limited control in how you present your prepared materials to your visitors. Once you reveal one, it is up to your attendees to choose whether they see it or not. The same is true for our featured action. So if I click on this, again, I get a prompt to share. The featured action shows up. I like that it shows up prominently. It's in the chat area. It is it's a prominent feature. One thing to keep in mind is that the chat can be closed. So if someone has closed the chat and you share things, I will share one more thing to show what that looks like. So someone has the chat closed because they find it distracting. I share a new thing and I confirm, and then it will open that sidebar for them again, right? So the moment you share, it will open that, it will make that visible to them again. That means it is nice and front and center. But again, once you do the reveal, everything else is then up to the attendee. So I can choose to hide this. Instead of answering it, I can choose to hide the chat again. But whenever, as an admin, you reveal something new, the attention really is on that thing. So that's well done. So that covers the main functionality in Demio for when you're doing a webinar. Finally, let's stop sharing and let's stop the webinar itself. So we end the webinar. So here on the attendee side, it sends us to a landing page that basically advertises Demio. And so it's a good idea to set a thank you page or to set a custom redirect after the event ends, because otherwise Demio basically tries to grab that traffic and turn them into customers, which I think is not a good move on their side, but you can override this. So back in our Demio dashboard, if we look at a past event, we can see here that we have the recording, we have some stats, and we have the recording. So if I click on recording, I get a link that I can share. And let's also go and visit that link in our visitor browser so that we can see this is the basic replay page. And as you can see, this is a very simple page which just has the replay on it. And the video plays if I share my screen and my webcam. The video plays in like this tall format, which is kind of strange. But here we don't have this entire interface. We don't have the interactive features in the replay. We just have this tall video. That also means that all of your shared polls and actions and all this kind of stuff are basically just invisible here, right? In the replay, this simply doesn't happen. Now what we can do, we can edit this page and we can, for example, add a call to action, which I'll do as a demo. So if I reload this page, here's what it does. Now we just have the call to action that I just created at the bottom of this page. So this is not the same as the featured actions that you can show at specific times during your webinar. I think this is important to know, right? The replay, the experience of someone joining the replay is very, very different in terms of the interacting and the features that you have. The replay is really just a video with maybe a button below it. It's very different from actually being on the live event or having like a simulated live event. So let's talk about some of the pros and cons that I've experienced in Demio. And I did do one real event with a real audience for this to give it a proper test. Now, as you saw, there's some pretty good features, and the whole sign-up flow and the experience of hosting as well as attending a webinar, there's nothing wrong there. I do miss a good like questions and answers feature. I have had difficulties with just chat features. If you just have an open chat, that usually just fills up with more stuff than you can keep track of. As a host, you almost have to close it because otherwise it just keeps distracting you. So a chat is just not a great way for the host to interact with the audience. It's a good way for the audience to interact with each other, but then they might just end up being distractions to each other as well instead of paying attention to the webinar. I would like to see better control over, what is displayed and in what way. I think the fact that you can't really control, you can't choose to have a larger live video and a smaller screen share or something like that. You can only, choose to only share your screen or only your live video feed or both, but there's just no control over how this exactly shows up for your attendees. But having said that, the features that are available for creating a live event and the live event itself is solid. That's a good experience. You have the marketing tools you need. Apart from the missing Q&A, you have the engagement features you need. The problem is the replay you get out of this is weak. So if you really want to use Demio for good marketing, first of all, you have to have your own landing pages because the built-in ones are just too basic. So you'd want to build your own funnel of landing pages and embed that button or embed the registration form from Demio. That's going to give you a better marketing funnel to get people to sign up to the webinar in the first place. And for the replay, well, all you get is this video, which is in a strange format to begin with. And all the interaction stuff, if you lean on that heavily during the webinar, that's basically just going to be missing from your replay. And that's just not great. So that's a pity, but it's not necessarily a deal breaker. What might be a deal breaker is the pricing. Let's have a look at the pricing of Demio. So it starts at $50 per month. And that is for a room that's limited to only 50 attendees. That's a really small room. It also doesn't include any of the automated webinar features. So there I have to say, for $50 a month, getting only live webinars, no automation features, and getting kind of a lame replay of that webinar, for 50 seats, that doesn't sound like a good deal to me. The next step up is $100 a month. That gives you the automated features and it gives you up to 150 attendees, which still, I have to say, it just isn't a steal. This is better pricing than you get for GoToWebinar, for example. But still, it feels like I'm paying a lot for just 150 seats here. And then the next step up is 500 seats, which is a lot. It's hard to fill a 500 seat webinar. And that gives you everything, but it costs more than $200 a month. Now, I'm quoting the monthly prices here. You do get a steep discount if you pay a year in advance, but that's just a lot of money all at once. So what I'm saying here is that in terms of pricing, I think there's just no option here that I find really attractive. Overall, I think Demio is a good solution, especially if they keep developing, if they improve that replay a bit. They could polish a few little things to make this a really strong solution. But if I look at the price and I look at what I get, there's nothing here that makes me feel, oh yeah, I need to have this. All right, so what's the conclusion from all this? Do I recommend Demio? Now, like I said in the beginning, I've used GoToWebinar for the longest time. And GoToWebinar is super expensive and it doesn't have most of the features that I've shown here. So basically almost anything I complain about in Demio doesn't even exist in GoToWebinar. So in that sense, I think it is a better place to start. If you want to start with webinars, instead of signing up for GoToWebinar and using that kind of dinosaur of a software, I think you're better off using Demio. But as you can tell, I'm not very enthusiastic about this recommendation. For me, one of the big tests here is also, if I recommend something, is it the thing that I'm going to be using? Am I going to be switching to this in order to do my webinars from now on? I am currently testing every webinar solution I can get my hands on, and I don't know if this one is going to end up the winner. I will update the description and post below this video as soon as I've done that and as soon as I've picked a winner. But for now, I can say that I would rather not, because I would have to get the highest price tier here. I often do webinars with around 200, maybe 250 people. So the medium price tier is not going to be enough for me. I would have to get the highest price tier. I'm not excited about paying that amount of money for what I get in Demio right here. So I hope I find a better solution. But to get started with webinars, yes, I do think this is better than GoToWebinar. All right, so that's my review of the Demio webinar software. Let me know if you have experience with this or other webinar software, and make sure to check the description or the post below this video to see if I have already reviewed all the others, because I'm going to make a big roundup review and pick a winner once I've tested them all.